most of my learners hate AI. And I was talking to a learner recently at a diner, and we got into this pretty deep conversation about it. We talked about the limitations, the risks, politically, socially, intellectually. What does it mean for our brains, for our relationships, and for the environment? And honestly, he is not alone in that opinion, in a very strong held opinion. I hear this a lot, and it's mostly from the youngest of the people that I know. So think, 11 to 18. These are the biggest majority population that off the beaten path learning serves. The idea of the safe path. Going to school, getting a 9 to 5, that model is breaking down before our eyes and very quickly. We are seeing the rise of the gig economy where people are working multiple jobs and sometimes in the same field. And we're seeing more people turning to, independent contract work and also entrepreneurship. Not necessarily even because they want to or they were called to it from day one, but because traditional structures aren't working and they're not even offering the same results, even if they are working. So feels safe today is in like 5 minutes, it's different. Telling young people to look for the safe option is less and less advisable because there is not one. And probably the safest thing is the most interesting, new, novel, original, innovative, maybe even a little bit controversial, because now we're in an attention game. And so that's a big part of it. So we want to provide clarity, but the reality is that we don't really have a lot of clarity to offer. So what we can instead offer is preparation, right? So what skills do they need to make decisions in environments that are constantly changing? So people focus on tools instead of skills, and I think we need to focus on skills. The most important one is critical thinking, and I would put with that judgment and I would put with that discernment, to be critical, to be a judge of something, to be discerning good from bad, priority from not priority. And when you're looking at an AI and what it gives you, you have to determine if this output is incomplete or misleading or just a bunch of hoo-ha and nothing, right? You need to know quality. A lot of people are talking about taste. And you need to have taste. And for that, you need to be in the world because taste is usually not, it's usually not necessarily just you have taste, but other people recognize that you have taste, which means it's some kind of shared cultural understanding of what beauty and good design looks like. And so for that, you're going to need to have critical thinking, whether that's in terms of beauty or mathematics or anything else, critical thinking. Whatever your field is, right? So it's not so much that it matters what they study, but how they study. And part of that is decision making. So not just making decisions, but making them with confidence, because uncertainty is forever. It's a constant. There won't always be a clear right answer. And so young people need the ability to choose a direction and stick to it and follow through. And this ties into confidence and empowerment and feeling like you can do it, like you can do the thing, right? And it requires courage and compassion and humility. Another important skill will be attention to detail. And I think the reverse of that too is that people will pay attention. So I think it's an exchange of attention where both the learner grows up having an attention span, which that's a tough one in 2026 and beyond, but also attention to detail. And those things at the same time are especially difficult. So good luck to us all. But I do think it'll be an important skill and one that we should all strive to facilitate in our learners. Because when you're working with outputs, AI outputs, there are going to be tiny little errors. Some of them obvious, some of them less obvious. But you'll need to be able to sift through them very carefully and review and notice the inconsistencies, the discrepancies, and just be able to fix it, fix it, fix it. And if I had to like summarize all of this, I would say we need to have a really nuanced and complex understanding and usage. Keyword on the usage. We need to have a really nuanced approach to AI. And we need to teach the same for our young people. Because something I do is unless I feel that it would be important and useful, um, and it's not ever necessary. This is the thing, it's not ever necessary. It's always a convenience. But unless I feel that it's an important enough convenience to waste, I mean, and this sounds ridiculous saying out loud, because that's what we're doing here. We're wasting billions of gallons of water. But what I try to do is I try to do as little prompting as possible. Not only because it costs me money, but because it costs our planet energy and resources. And I know that. So I try to avoid the prompting. In the same way that a human being should not abuse alcohol, we should not abuse this AI. In the same way. And it can easily become an addiction, I think, in both regards. People overdo it. They have form relationships with these entities. And maybe that's the future, but it can go overboard. It can be dangerous. It can just not be helpful. And so we need to be very responsible with how we use it, with how we approach it. And so this is also why I wanted to include a perspective from Sinead Bovell, who's a futurist, and she's in the world of technology. She talks a lot about AI. And she also recently was on Earn Your Leisure, the podcast, and she was speaking about specifically self-directed learning, which is the model that Off the Beaten Path Learning centers its learning model on. And self-directed education, she spoke about it like it's going to be the most critical vehicle for us to develop all these skills that we need to. Because essentially at the heart of self-directed education is that you are learning to learn. Because you're self-directing, because you're choosing for yourself what you learn, where you learn, when, with whom, why, what, all the things. You decide every aspect of it. And through that decision making, you're figuring out the process. The meta thinking of it is happening. So you are learning how you learn so that you're prepared for anything, any situation, you can figure it out. This is incredibly important. This is not to be understated or misunderstood, because the opposite of that is what we've been doing for so long. Carter G. Woodson said that the worst sort of lynching was to essentially to tell someone that they aren't smart and to give them a miseducation. That's the worst sort of lynching, is to take that away from somebody. And the reverse of that is that if you give someone the ability to learn how they learn, wow, what a gift. What an incredibly powerful gift. So again, instead of focusing on what should I study to be safe, think more about how. How do we help them to learn the ability, the skill to learn, to adapt, to think for themselves, to judge for themselves? It's a very different orientation. Okay.